Hello, my name is Nex, and I'm going to be doing a small little walkthrough, well, long little walkthrough, of basically everything that is in my Keith Haring Experience project, just to show uh, all the blueprints, the levels, and basically going through how I essentially did everything. So to start things off simply, I have a start and an end level scene, so it displays the UI, like the user interface, to the viewer essentially. And it's basically how the player will be able to navigate between the levels at the start, and then also how to exit the game if they wish to leave the game at the beginning or end of the game or experience. If I go back and forth between experience and game, it's just because I'm used to calling them games for the time being. But basically, the start button for the starting screen will go to the first level in the game, which is this background scene right here. And quitting will essentially exit out of the game. So if I scroll down here and I go to on click, it shows basically both of the buttons working. So for one of them, it quits the game. For the other one, it starts at the first level scene, essentially. And then it basically works the same way with the end scene. If the person clicks return to start, it'll bring them actually back to this main menu. And then if they hit quit experience, it ends the game. And the buttons work kind of the same as the first one, just, different functions and stuff like that. So after the start scene, you go into the first subway scene. So the subway scene is all on grayscale. It's actually just a little box that I put around the scene. So if I come out of this box, everything is completely colored again. I basically come down here, and if I go to grayscale and I look at the where is it? Oh, color grading. If I go to color grading, I go to global, it's just the saturation. It's turned down to 0, so it creates this grayscale kind of effect. But in the subway scene, we have a sequencer. So it basically, if I hit play, it starts this lovely old scene as if you're coming into the train tracks or the railway subway sorry, as if you're coming into the subway, and it plays a little audio in the background so that you can basically it has that sound effect as if you're like obviously in a subway. But also it has other functions too, so other functions for the player, like these paintings. So these paintings are scattered across all 3 of these subway scenes, and the blueprints are in paintings. And I created a bunch of different ones because I had a hard time figuring out how to do parent-childing stuff with the nodes. So I just thought it was a lot easier to make individual ones and then calling them based off of what class or what subway station they fall under. So BW means black and white, means that they fall under this very first scene. BWC means black, white, color. It's like a transition scene that happens in the second subway, which I'll show in a minute. And then C stands for color. It's the very last subway scene. But all of these function relatively the same, or they all actually function all the same. So basically what happens is if the player walks over this little box right here, what it's going to do is when the player overlaps it, it's going to make sure it's the player, and it's going to play a sound at that location. And that sound is going to be a spray painting sound, as if you're spray painting onto the painting itself. From there, it's going to change the material from this gray color to whatever the image I want it to be at the time. So this one's called heart matte, so it's a little heart material. And it's gonna bring that onto this specific plane, not the whole thing, just the plane itself. And then from there, it's going to get the actor class. So it's getting the level change painting, which is this one right here. And it's going to call function, or it's going to call like a snippet of code in there called collect paintings before it destroys this box, so that if the viewer were to walk over the box again, it wouldn't make that spray paint effect again because they've already spray painted it. But that is how these spray paintings work. And you see that there's 2. Well, how the scene looks is that this very last painting does not actually exist when the player first starts off. So if I hit play and I go through the little sequence and I look at everything again, right? Oh, if I look over here, that painting doesn't actually exist. So how it works is if I come over here, and it's the same across all of the individual scenes. If I come over here, it looks like a lot, I know. But basically this helps transition between each of these subway scenes at the bottom and the abstract scene. So this is what that thing's happening. But we'll not focus on that right now. Right now, we're going to focus on this collect and collect paintings. So how collect and collect paintings work is that it is basically making the painting visible after the player collects or spray paints all the paintings on the wall. So paintings collected is set to 0 because obviously when you start off, you're not having any paintings, but it counts and it makes sure that it gets to 2. And once it gets to 2 paintings for the first scene, it makes all the stuff visible to the viewer. So they'll be able to see this whole little box and it'll turn on and it'll work. It doesn't work unless the player obviously does all the stuff. So like if I were to walk up to that scene, like if I were to walk up to that painting in the scene, it wouldn't activate anyways because I haven't checked off all the paintings. So then from there, once it's activated, once the viewer overlaps on onto the painting, so it has a little box overlap system on top of it. Once they walk through the painting, it's going to check to make sure it's going to the viewer. And then it's going to check to make sure that like this is completed. And then from there, it's going to essentially go to the next level. So the next level for this is going to be Subway Station 2. And it works the same way. It's just the difference now is that there's more paintings for the viewer to paint. There's like one more painting for them to paint, which means it ups the count for the max counter. And then from there, it also, or not from there, sorry, but also in this scene, you notice that there's more color, but it's still kind of like desaturated. So it's not fully there. It's only up by like 50%. So then once the viewer goes through and does all the paintings again, and it has the same sequence as before, they'll get transferred to the last scene, which is 100% saturation. So it's back to its standard color. So this is how the scene would look like if it wasn't in grayscale. And they'll have more paintings that they'll have to go through and collect, and they'll be all colorful and stuff, and then they'll get to this last scene. Oh, I just realized that I did not show the blueprints for the sequences, but this is basically how it basically says like once the scene starts, to play the sequence that is in the scene. But basically, once you get to this last painting, so this is like the last subway station scene, you'll get put into this abstract level. Because how I wanted this to work was I wanted it to show the abstract and very vibrant and creativeness of Keith Haring's artworks, while also, keeping it like how he started off, because he started off in subways and doing, graffiti art and stuff like that, or graffiti art. But basically, I wanted to kind of mimic that, like how he started off, and then get into like the whole very abstract and bright colors and stuff like that. So that's kind of what the abstract level is. So it needs a second to load. There's a lot of particles in here. So it starts off, it looks a lot different in the game. It just looks like there's not a lot of lights, but there's a lot of lights when you play it in the game itself. But it has a bunch of particle systems of all the little things that he's done and some of the stuff that he's done in the background. And it has a bunch of these little collisions. So as the player walks through these collisions, they're basically going to activate more particle systems. And I changed, so some of the particle systems by themselves, like the ones that are currently happening right now, those are just standard basic particle systems. They have their own little category in here. Well, they all have a category in here. But like, basically, it was just me going in, changing all the images. For some of them, I changed the like how many of them appeared, or like the sizes of them, so that some of them would be in your face and some of them wouldn't be in your face, like kind of vibes and energy. So, but most of these collisions work, or all these collisions work the same. With the exception of one, there's one more collision on top of this one. Well, there's multiple in this stack because it triggers multiple particle systems at once, because I want them to display in different locations, but I needed them to all appear at the same time. But basically, another thing on top is it slows the player down, but I'll show that in a second. But how all these particle systems work is that when the viewer overlaps this box that the particle system is at, it will play a sound, and it'll play the spray paint sound, because like that's become very prominent as you're playing. So I thought it would be really nice to keep that. From there, because these particle systems are all deactivated in their code, I reactivate them so that they appear. And then I also make sure that I destroy the box so that you cannot walk back over it again. And it plays the spray paint sound all over again. Similar to how the spray paint works, or how the paintings work for the subway station. It basically just gets rid of the box so that you don't have to worry about it. So that's how all of these particle systems work, and they're all a little bit different. They all have different little functions. I'll do like a small little walkthrough of them. But before that, in my blueprints, we have all these. Collision means that the player can't go out of these bounds. They can only stay on that strict linear path. Player speed up is at the very end. It just helps put the player back at normal speed. But how those two work, because there's player slowdown or player speed, which is right here with these other particle systems, and it basically just gets the player, it figures out whenever they overlap the thing to just slow their speed down a little bit so that they have more, to kind of like get the player to be intimate with the scene itself. So if I click play, it has its own sequencer, very loud, and it also has its own music too, or ambient music sounds. But if I walk through, you hear spray paint sounds and more images will appear. And that's what it looks like with all the particle systems turned on at once. You're looking at a whole wide variety of messes. In the game, it looks a lot brighter, so it doesn't look as dull as it does in the sequence right now. But anyways, so once you're done, you'll walk through this wall, because this wall is hollow. You can actually, or not hollow. There's no collision here on this wall, because I want the viewer to walk straight through, and I want them to end on this scene, which is Keith Haring's last painting, or last piece that he ever did before he passed away. And it's kind of like a whole like cycle of like of how he became to be, and essentially how his story ended. That's what this whole experience is. And once the player walks through this final painting, it'll bring them back to the end level sequence, and you'll be able to start over again, go back to the start, or you'll be able to quit the game essentially. But yeah, that's basically how this project looks. The world is very wacky and chaotic. It took a little bit to build, a little while. Definitely had a lot of tutorials that I had to go through and look. Definitely when it came to the particle systems, it was a little confusing in the beginning, but I eventually got through it, and I was able to figure out how I wanted everything to look, how to figure out how to add sequences and stuff like that, and music. But yeah, a lot of building, a lot of fun. But that's basically the whole walkthrough of how I built all of the Keith Haring Experience project, and all the blueprints and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye!